Hey squad, Logan here talking Venom 3, Venom The Last Dance. Spoiler-free review coming at you right now here on Mostly Superheroes. Big thanks to Allied Global Marketing and Sean and Julie and all the people sending us to the movies early. Lucky enough to see Venom The Last Dance early with Carrie at Ronnie's Marcus Theaters here in St. Louis on a Tuesday night. And want to give you that spoiler-free reaction as you're heading into the weekend. If you're thinking about going to see a Marvel movie, yes, it's a Marvel movie by Sony in theaters. Want to give you that spoiler-free take of the film. And we'll get into a little spoilers toward the end, too. Just a little bit. If you did see the movie, I have a few thoughts that I'll rattle off. Spoiler-free take going in. If you saw the first two, you're probably planning on seeing the third one. You might be asking yourself, am I going to wait for this to stream back home, or am I going to go out and see a superhero movie in the theaters? Because if you're listening to this podcast, you might be like us and you want to get out and see even the Sony films, right? Even the Morbiuses, the Venoms. They have been a little weird with the rights and the ownerships over the years. Sony owning pretty much a pocket of Spider-Man villains, and Spider-Man himself is owned by Sony. The rest of the Marvel properties, of course, owned by Disney/Marvel Studios. So this is one of those offshoot films. It's the third in a trilogy, okay? You have to see the first two to see the first one. I would say, though, this movie pretty much stands on its own feet. There's not a ton of callbacks to previous things and previous movies outside of the main thing, which is, a symbiote alien named Venom takes over this guy named Eddie Brock, played by Tom Hardy, and that's really it. The third movie really does have its own story. It kind of drops you in at a point where you don't really care or know what happened before. So if you're worried about that, don't sweat it. Could it be fun to rewatch these two movies before? I think always. And the only other thing that we got from this character that you might want to take a look at is an in-credit scene of the movie Spider-Man No Way Home. Yes, MCU flick. And there's an in-credit scene with, yes, Venom. This Venom, Tom Hardy, a multiverse crossover. If you just do a quick search for that scene, he's sitting at a bar with the bartender is one of the guys from Ted Lasso. So you might recognize it. Check it out. I think you should see that before. And the spoiler-free review on our 4.0 scale, me and Carrie tied on this. We had the exact same rating, 3.5 out of 4.0. A fun movie. Doesn't take itself too seriously. It's a great experience, better than the first two, and it had just kind of that same kind of like we're here, we're doing this, but I would just say that it felt a little better made than the first two, just in terms of the looks, the story being kind of simpler. Maybe that had some help for it. So if you're on the fence, I would push you to. It's great for families too. This is I believe it's PG-13, and yeah, you get some monsters kind of eating people. Outside of that, though, it's pretty kid-friendly. There is a family element brought into this film. So, this might be one that you could take your kids to, do your own research and decide for yourself. Venom, The Last Dance, that's your spoiler-free review and reaction. If you saw the movie and you just you just saw it, I don't need to recap it for you. I want to just give out my thoughts on spoiler alert right now. Few thoughts I have on the film that were just kind of wild. Mentioned in the spoiler-free take, no connection to the first two movies outside of Eddie Brock has this symbiote named Venom. The only continuation is that their relationship is evolving, right? They kind of tell you in this movie that they've been together about a year. So if you think of like Eddie Brock's experience getting this Venom symbiote and how it radically changed his life, I really enjoyed in this movie kind of seeing the evolution of that relationship. Also seeing sides of Eddie kind of going through the motions of like he had a really serious girlfriend. You might remember from the first movie, and in this movie you kind of realize like him and Venom are truly like best buddies. So again, we gave that spoiler alert. Seeing how the movie ends, I think that brought it home for me. Was the end fight sequence had some true like Avenger vibes and team up movie vibes, just in terms of the symbiotes taking over the scientist. I didn't need to even know which one was which, who was who. Shout out to Martin Casas. He was there seeing this movie at Ronnie's as well. He, from Apotheosis Comics, and he was saying he was giving me the names of all the different symbiotes from the Venom comics. So if you're a diehard Venom fan, apparently, from what Martin told me, is you're going to get those payoffs for looking for certain symbiotes. So from an outsider looking in, I didn't need to know any of that. And the team up elements, I think the action was really great. There was a bit of a lull in the middle of the movie with the family singing in the van, a lot of time at the casino, and then we literally get like a Venom dance scene, like per the title, even though that put them in very serious danger, right? If going full Venom created this codec, and let's just talk about the big bad real quick. Null, big Venom villain, per I've read, not by reputation to me. Scott's aware, Martin's aware, any comic book fan knows. For me, what they did in this movie was introduce you to Null, showed you on a planet, he's on a planet or a reality far away, locked away. Definitely has some sort of multiverse powers, because we see how he creates these kind of gold rings, sends his creatures to go hunt these Venom, these symbiotes. And then you don't really get any other Null. Like, there's no big fight scene with Null. It's just kind of like he never makes it to Earth. And then we've already said spoiler, end credit scene. He's still like kind of like, oh, I'll come back one day. But in my mind, you're wrapping up this trilogy. I thought this was like the last movie. Is this just like another Sony thing where like it means absolutely nothing? Just like when we got the Vulture in the end credit scene with Morbius, Michael Keaton's Vulture, like from Spider-Man Homecoming, was in that end credit scene. It just made no sense at all. It's like, is that one of those things that'll just never get paid off? The Sony adjacent Spiderverse, I guess the way that they're doing things in the MCU now, anything could happen. I wouldn't mind seeing this actual Venom face off against our Spider-Man, Tom Holland's Spider-Man. I think that you've got an established Venom. You don't need to like make Venom happen again. And in that last regard, this is my last thought on the film, tying it to the MCU. I mentioned in the spoiler-free take that you might want to check out the end credit scene from Spider-Man No Way Home. Venom comes to the MCU, essentially, is just sitting in a bar kind of finding out about the Marvel Cinematic Universe and Thanos, and he leaves a little Venom behind before he gets like taken back. That's what happens in Spider-Man No Way Home. This movie opens with that scene, and like Scott said on the podcast, I think last week, they may have retconned this. So whenever you watch this opening scene, it's the same exact scene almost. It's like the exact same until he gets sucked back, and then he gets sucked back to kind of the same bar in his reality. So, and then he leaves his Venom behind there in like his own reality, just a little Venom that gets on the guy from Ted Lasso. I can't think of his name right now, but he's the hilarious bartender. He's in Ted Lasso. He's like, I love football, I think he says in Ted Lasso in the first season, if you've seen the show. And he leaves it there, and it gets stuck on him. So it kind of makes it seem like he didn't leave it behind in the MCU anymore. Again, take that for what you will. Sony out here doing their thing. That's Venom, The Last Dance, the third, the final? Question mark. That's what we think here at Mostly Superheroes. I'm your host, Logan. Let us know what you think of the movie. Write us in at mostlysuperheroes.com. Check us out on the socials, and we'll see you for the next one. Mostly Superheroes is proud to be funded in part by our sponsors. Mostly Superheroes is funded in part by paying patrons who receive early, ad-free, and exclusive episodes. Subscribe at mostlysuperheroes.com/support. Thank you for supporting your favorite independent podcast. Mostly Superheroes is an independent podcast owned and operated by Carrogan Ventures in St. Louis, Missouri. Hosted by Logan Janis, Andy Hunn, and Scott Swearingen. Brand and creative by Carrie Clark Design. Music by Audionautics. Learn more at audionautics.com. Find more at mostlysuperheroes.com.